the right to vote is not a privilege. It's foundational. It's a hallmark of democracy.
And I knew that the whole notion that, oh, your vote don't count because no matter what happens, they're going to do whatever they do anyway. I realized that wasn't accurate. Like, the votes actually do count.
I'm Pam Bailey, co-founder of More Than Our Crimes, and we advocate for second chances. And we're here today to discuss the benefits of allowing people who are still incarcerated in prison to vote. Participation in elections, which is considered the hallmark of a true democracy, was just 62.8% of voting of eligible people in the United States in 2020. Now, that may sound high, but the Pew Research Center took a look at 45 sort of similar countries, and we were 31st in 2020. So we have to sort of keep that in mind, because I find it rather interesting that there's so much effort to disenfranchise people at a time when we really need more people to be active citizens. In the last 2 years, we've had 11 states either pass a law or they're waiting for the governor's approval that would disenfranchise more people. Now, the good news is 17 states have expanded. So you see this sort of like equal tug of war going on. Now, among the populations that are the most disenfranchised are people in prison or have had felony convictions and are out. That's why I'm very proud of DC and of you, Councilmember White, for championing this cause to join Maine and Vermont in allowing people to vote while they're still in prison. And I think that's why we also now have Massachusetts, California, and Illinois who are considering doing the same. So I want to start with the first questions to Conrad and Jean, who were in prison at the time that the Restore the Vote Act was passed. Jean, when you heard about the act, what made you want to register to vote? Was that immediate, or did you have to think about it? And what motivated you to do it?
For me, it was immediate. My entire incarceration, all I ever wanted to do was be free, be, back into society, be able to participate in my community and my civic duties. And one of the things that we knew as incarcerated women and men that we couldn't do was vote. Like, that was one of the things that was highlighted. You don't have rights at all, but they always talk about the right to vote. So when I heard that we was given an opportunity, I wanted to vote immediately. I wanted to be a part of the community. And I knew that the whole notion that, oh, your vote don't count because no matter what happens, they're going to do whatever they do anyway. I realized that wasn't accurate. Like, the votes actually do count. So if the only way that you can sit and complain about something is if you have action, you've taken action first, right? And then if it don't work, then you can complain. But don't complain if you didn't even do nothing about it.
I always want to, because I understood that was a hallmark of my citizenship. And when you talk about rehabilitation, and even with me having a life sentence, I always knew that I would come home. So if I was going to be a citizen and come out of criminal mentality into a citizen, and me had a mindset of citizenship, that was part of it. And you got to remember, when you disenfranchise, because that's, when you get incarcerated, it already alienates you from society. So to have that ability to now partake in a very political system in your country, or especially local politics, I jumped at it,
Yeah, and I think that relates to the issue of how DC people are treated differently in federal prison overall, which is a whole other subject. Galen, you were in jail, not a prison, but in jail at the time, and you chose to vote. Why don't you talk about why it was important for you?
Sure. I was raised to believe that civic engagement is a responsibility and a vital part of creating the world that we want to live in together. And so when my vote was taken based on my felony conviction as a teenager, that part of me was stripped away. Many people who've experienced a carceral setting, I saw a lot of things in there that I would like to change. a lot of dehumanization, a lot of systemic things that don't make any sense and don't make us safer as a society. And so voting is a way for me to be a part of the change that I want to see. And I think that we are going to continue to have mass incarceration and mass supervision and this is a society of continuous control until people who've been directly impacted by this system are enfranchised and able to raise their voices and ask for change.
So, Councilmember White, go back to the time when you decided to introduce Restore the Vote Act. How did that come about? Why did you choose that issue?
It sounds a little cliche, but I would say I didn't choose the issue. It chose me. It's deciding to introduce the bill started a bit before when I was going through law school and working on Capitol Hill for Congresswoman Norton. My brother was incarcerated in Petersburg. He had kids, so it impacted our entire family. And I did the drive from DC to Petersburg frequently to make sure he could stay in contact with his kids. But I didn't like what I saw in terms of conditions of confinement. But I got really angry when my brother came back to the halfway house, which at that time was Hope Village, and the barriers they put up to make it harder for people to reintegrate back into society. So I made a determination that anytime in my career I was in a place to advance these issues, I would. So when I got elected, we passed the bill to give free IDs and birth certificates to people returning from incarceration, free transportation stipend. I created housing subsidies for formerly incarcerated residents. And so they came to me and said, okay, we really appreciate everything you've done. These ideas came from the returning citizen community. They said, now the important thing we really want is for people who are still incarcerated to be able to vote. And I'll be honest with you, I took a deep breath and I said, whoa, that's a high hurdle because I wasn't aware of anywhere in the country that had done it and no one had. Vermont and Maine never took that right away. But I'm a lawyer, and so I know that there's nothing in the Constitution barring incarcerated people from voting. So I said, let me go into the history to understand when, why, and how the right to vote was taken away. And as soon as I started researching when each state, 48 states and the District of Columbia, took away the right to vote, it was almost all surrounding passage of the 14th Amendment ending slavery and the constitutional amendment granting Black men the right to vote. So it was absolutely directly a racist history that we needed to unwind, which is why I called the bill Restore the Vote, because I wanted to remind people that it was a right that was taken away. As I really looked at the Constitution, I said to myself, most rights you still carry with you into prison. Constitutional rights, the right to marry, freedom of religion, freedom of speech. But the most fundamental right, as Conrad said, a hallmark of democracy, the right to vote, gets taken away as sort of a privilege. The right to vote is not a privilege. It's foundational. It's a hallmark of democracy. Well, generally, elected officials listen to the people voting. So if there are poor conditions in incarceration, not preparing people for coming home, not giving them the support once they get home, those conditions don't change unless the people affected can vote. And so if they are voting in their interest, as most people in a democracy do, their interest is to improve the conditions of incarceration, which is going to make us safer in the long run.
Okay, great. Yeah. Now, Nana, you told me before that you don't want to be defined by the harmful experience you went through. However, your perspective is really important because we are in a situation right now where crime is going up, and across the community, people are reacting and responding out of fear, either because they've been impacted themselves or it's happened on their street and they no longer feel safe going out. So it's really important to bring you into the conversation because you represent a lot of people that need to understand this issue. So tell us a little bit about so maybe just briefly what your experience was, and then why would you think that it is important to allow people incarcerated to vote?
Yeah, well, my husband, as you know, Pam, was murdered in 2006 by a very young man, a teenager. Some would call him a child, a 15-year-old. And it was devastating, it was horrible. But prior to that, I'm a Black woman in America. Prior to that, I've always been a champion, whether or not an activist, a champion for the upliftment of my people, right? The improvement of our condition, equality for us. And there are so many places in society where that doesn't exist. And so putting my situation aside and in dealing with a lot of growth and a lot of healing from the trauma of that experience, and I'm still in that, it's important to me to, and by the way, Council Member White, you did an incredible job of laying the legal premise for this. But, just as a citizen, it's important for me that we do live in a safe society. And I don't believe, I'm a logical person. If you look at the increase of crime, clearly something's not working. Not allowing people who are incarcerated to vote is not bringing crime down. Not giving people second chances is not bringing crime down. So we have to look at the situation, look at the conditions, and figure out what's going wrong.
If you were talking to a member of the community who is not in the activist community, basically, what would you say to them about why they should support the right of people? Because the problem is, this is the group we need to reach. They're not thinking about this population, and the first thing they probably think is, well, it's that you did it wrong. So they're thinking of a self-interest. So how would you speak to their self-interest, I guess is the question.
When we dehumanize people by telling them that their voices don't count, we condemn them to this perpetual pariahdom, this second-class citizenship. And I think that the research shows that actually drives crime. This alienation concept where you can never be part of our society again.
So a big challenge we have is to convince those individuals that their vote does make a difference. Now, I want to add that I think part of doing that is engaging in something what I call participatory democracy. And that is, it shouldn't just be at election time. They need to see and feel somehow that they're being heard when policy is being made, that if there's a policy is being debated that would affect them, that even though they're far away, and this is the challenge, they're far away from home, behind thick walls, so that poses a special challenge. How can they be engaged in civic life? Because if they're not, it's only going to be at election time, and it feels very disconnected from reality. So I guess my question, I'm going to start with you, is what are your thoughts? How can we demonstrate to the people inside that voting is meaningful, and it's not just going to be something like every 4 years or so?
Right. So two things, and I think this is really important for anybody who's incarcerated, who's feeling like it doesn't matter if I vote or who I vote for. The ideas that I was able to pass into law, free transportation, free ID, right to vote, right? These ideas existed before I got into office, but they needed someone elected to carry them forward. So if you vote for the person you believe that will carry your interests forward. Someone without the same lived experiences as me may not have prioritized these issues. So that vote mattered because I could have lost the election and these issues probably would not have moved forward. The other thing, if you think about, like, picture yourself a Maryland resident in a Maryland prison, and you all are talking about the issues that affect you. And as a cohort, you all say, these are our three priorities, and we're going to place our vote for the person running for office that we believe will most likely advance these priorities. Guess what? Folks running for office are going to listen.
Can I piggyback on something you said really briefly? That a lot of people are the product of their environments, right? That's what led to the crime originally, and what creates the problem of reentry, because the environment that we have them in is so dehumanizing, so traumatizing for so long. And so I think part of the voter engagement issue is creating an environment where people feel empowered, feel like they have ownership over their own destiny. Because so many people living behind the walls don't feel that way. They feel like they have no control over any of it. And this is an opportunity, voting is an opportunity to give people some power back over their lives. And I would say to the people that I was locked up with, put up or shut up.
Not only gives maybe you the last comment. I mean, all the guys inside, the women inside are seeing the news about crime going up, and they hear a lot of fear-based, sort of revenge, punishment-based talk, and so they get the feeling that, wow, they're all afraid of us, you know. So what would you say as somebody in the community who understands that fear? What would you say to them about why you think their vote counts?
There are so many cascading effects to obstinance, to not wanting change. But if we can come together and be solutions oriented, solutions minded, having conversations, we can get somewhere. I want the society to be safer. I totally understand the fears and the revenge and the rage of people who've been impacted by crime, especially violent crime, especially who's lost a loved one or who's been personally violently violated. I understand that. That's a genuine thing. But staying in that same place keeps you in prison, right? That can't say the same. So we all have to come together and have these conversations. And I hope more people like myself will speak out if they are of similar mind to myself, who will say, we want that change too. We believe in reform too. We believe that everybody should have the vote.
We're dealing with a public safety crisis, and I'm on the council, and there are a number of proposals that are, based in fear, and people are feeling fear, and elected officials are trying to be responsive to that. I'm nervous that we're going to go back down a road that we've done in the 80s and 90s and make the same mistakes because we're operating from fear. But if all I'm doing as an elected official saying, no, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, I'm not moving the ball because those things are going to pass because a bad plan beats no plan every day.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.